For years, people on the left have been accused of being unpatriotic, and I feel like that really escalated that narrative. It really escalated during the Iraq War. It seemed as though if you opposed the war at all, then you were called unpatriotic. You were told you didn't love your country or you hated your country. And we spent so much time arguing with Republicans and saying, hey, just because we don't support this war doesn't mean we don't support the troops. It doesn't mean that we don't love our country. That was an argument we had for 8 years while Bush and Cheney was in office. And then John McCain run for president against Barack Obama. And at that time, if you criticized John McCain at all, Republicans would say to me, well, you don't love your country. This guy served his country. He's a veteran. You should have respect for that. And again, we would say, we respect McCain's military service. We're not knocking that in any way. We just disagree with him on policies, and that's why we'll be voting for Barack Obama. But it's funny to me how that when Donald Trump came along, that narrative completely shifted. And people that once argued with me and told me that I wasn't allowed to disagree with McCain if I did, I hated my country or didn't support veterans, are the same people that sat back and let Donald Trump say that John McCain wasn't a hero because he got caught, and he said, I like soldiers who didn't get caught. A complete and total slap in the face to everyone that served and everyone who was ever a prisoner of war. And I just sat back waiting to see if that Republican Party would come to bat and say, hey, you don't disrespect veterans like that, because they used to say that to me if I just simply disagreed with McCain. But they were perfectly okay with Donald Trump throwing such an insult. Now, we all know how we felt when we heard that insult, but can you imagine being his children? Can you imagine his son, Jim McCain, hearing that for the first time, hearing someone say that about your father? Well, Jim McCain has recently came out and said that he is now registered as a Democrat so he can vote for Kamala Harris. And right here in this clip, he talks about what it was like hearing Donald Trump say those things about his dad. Take a look.
Donald Trump has said a lot of things that have offended people in the veterans community. It may have started actually when he said that your dad wasn't a war hero because he was captured. That was back in 2015. And then there are all the other things that he has said and done, including what his former Marine General and Chief of Staff John Kelly said, that he said behind closed doors, and suckers, losers, etc. You were a political independent for years, and you just recently registered as a Democrat. Why the switch, and how much of you moving not into the Republican Party, but starting as an independent and now moving to the Democratic Party, how much of that is because of Trump and his effect on the Republican Party and his attitude towards veterans?
I mean, to begin, what Trump said about my father is irreprehensible. I mean, it's I've never forgotten it. And, to remind everyone, John McCain was my father as well. And, he was the guy I went to when I skinned my knee, So to hear those things said about him, I can never forgive. The one thing about John McCain is that he cared about his country and he lived his life that way. So as we moved on, and I was gone for a year, so I didn't have a chance to change. But as soon as I was back, I see, I care about my family. I care about equal rights of everyone in this country. I care about all this. And, as much as I stayed as an independent, I decided that, it was time to move on and do what I believe in. The fact of the matter that he said it constantly is country first. You have to think about your country first. However that is, care about your country. Care about how making it better, not being divided, but being together as one to continue to be the greatest country in the world.
I really believe that putting your country first is patriotic, putting your country above your political ideology or above one man. That's the thing about MAGA. Their loyalty is to Donald Trump and Donald Trump alone. And I don't see how that you can be patriotic and support just one guy and his ways, and you're never allowed to criticize that guy. You're never allowed to speak against him. I don't see anything patriotic about being a Trump supporter at all. And I can't imagine what it would have been like to have been Jim McCain and hear those things said about your dad. I know that I cringed, and I've never met John McCain and wasn't going to vote for him. But I never felt like that was anything that we should ever throw shade at John McCain over. I do remember some articles that were written around the time that McCain was running, and some of the articles suggested that the reason why he got captured was because he was incompetent. and or because he made poor decisions. And I would always clap back on those and say, no, we're not going there because I didn't serve my country. And I'll be damned if I'm going to criticize a man who did. I wasn't there. I don't know what I would have done in those circumstances. So I never believed in taking it there. That's why when I heard Trump's comments about McCain, I was so shocked. And again, just waiting to see if the Republicans would stand up and be consistent. But in MAGA, there is no consistency. They threw that out the door a long time ago. But what a lot of people don't realize about John McCain, and those who thinks that he wasn't heroic, he absolutely was. He was actually offered early release, but refused to take it. Take a look at this clip.
Yeah, just as a factual matter, I mean, your father, first of all, a lot of people are taken prisoner during war, and your father was offered early release because his father was an admiral during the Vietnam War. His grandfather was too, and he declined early release because that's not how prisoners are supposed to be released. They're supposed to be released in the order of how they were captured, and that is the definition of heroic. What do other veterans say to you? Because obviously, just as a matter of statistics, most white men in this country are supporting Donald Trump, just statistically, and most white men in the military are supporting Donald Trump. What do you hear from when it comes to your former colleagues in the Marines and your current colleagues in the Army?
I mean, I think that it's just like anywhere else. I mean, veterans are people just like everyone else, and that's a plethora of diverse opinions. You know, I think that people are still trying to figure out what's happening in this election and which way they're going to go, especially with Kamala Harris entering the race. And I think that just like any other group of people, everyone's trying to figure it out. It's a diverse group of people, and you know, they're all trying to look, you know, what's going to help the military. You know, that's on the main thought for most of them. So.
You know, he does make a great point there. There is a lot of diversity in the military, and I could argue that from the opposite angle and say that Republicans need to be mindful of that too. While it may be true that statistically more white dudes and more white military servicemen are for Donald Trump, it doesn't mean that everyone is. It doesn't mean that everyone buys into that rhetoric. And just because they don't buy into that rhetoric doesn't mean they love their country any less. There's a whole lot of people who serve and they don't necessarily agree with the president they're serving under, but they serve anyway. And you have to admire that and respect it. In this next clip, though, Jim McCain talks about how the Arizona Republicans have pretty much left John McCain. You got to understand that John McCain is not a rhino. When you hear them use that phrase, Republican in name only, no, John McCain truly was a Republican. And what we have now in Arizona and around this country that's calling themselves MAGA is an extreme version of that. Roll the clip.
The Arizona Republican Party is rather extreme. And I was talking about this with Senator Kelly earlier, but the idea that, I mean, according to polls, that they're about to lose another Senate race because they keep nominating people who are election deniers and not grounded in reality. It's a very different Republican Party than the one that supported your dad and Senator John Kyle, Barry Goldwater, and on and on. Were you going to become a Democrat either way, or did Kamala Harris play a role? And what has been the impact of the Arizona Republican Party on your beliefs?
I mean, I think the Arizona Republican Party is trying to express what they believe is the best. I mean, they did censor my mother and my entire family out of it. So, you know, they're choosing the path that they want to go. But I think one of the main points of switching over and coming over has been, you know, like I said, I feel that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz embody a group of people that will help make this country better, that will take us forward. And that's really what matters at the end of the day is, you know, voting with your heart, voting how you feel going forward. And that's how I feel.
You know, I truly believe that if you're going to vote with your heart and you want to move this country forward, then the only option is Kamala Harris. I can't see that there's even an option with Donald Trump because we cannot go back to that, folks. And when we say we're not going back, we don't just mean back to his administration. A lot of people may think that's what we mean. No, we mean further back than that because Donald Trump wants to take us back even further, and his presidency did take us back. While Donald Trump may have lost and he's going to lose again, you got to understand that his presidency had such an impact on the world. Roe versus Wade being overturned, the Supreme Court being stacked to the right the way that it is. His presidency definitely took a toll on this country, and a second Donald Trump presidency would I think, be the end of democracy. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic when I say that. But based on everything that he's talked about doing and wanting to do, and everything that MAGA has been willing to turn a blind eye to, I just feel like the risk is way too high to ever let that guy back behind the desk. Now, I do want to say this about the John McCain era Republicans. And again, I totally respect John McCain for his service to this country, and I would never knock or disgrace that in any way. I have the utmost respect for that. But I really feel like that era of the Republican Party, I feel like they're every bit as to blame for the rise of Donald Trump as anyone. And the reason I say that is because they literally just ran out of ideas. They never had anything new to bring to the table. They really didn't. And they were becoming more and more unpopular. And I really believe that if Donald Trump hadn't have came into the political arena and shook things up the way he did, I don't think a Republican would have been elected again for a long, long time. And I really believe that if Donald Trump can be defeated in November, that we won't see one for a long time. And the reason I say that is because, like I said, they just completely ran out of ideas, and Donald Trump came along, and he was, a celebrity. He was a businessman back in 2016. People's like, well, let's give someone else a shot at it. Someone that's not experienced in government, let's give them a shot at it, which is a totally stupid thing to say. And once he got in office, we realized just how stupid that truly was. But I really feel like that if the Republican Party of Mitt Romney and John McCain and George W. Bush, I really feel like that if they could have came up with a better alternative, and if they could have came up with more modern ideas, then I think we could have been sitting back having a completely different argument today. I'm not laying all the blame on them, but if you stop and think about what would it have been like had we had an alternative, had we had something different, and had the Republican Party offered us something different. They've not in years. And what Donald Trump offered us was such a radical brand of it that I really feel like this is the case of not being able to put the toothpaste back in the tube. I believe we're going to be suffering over what Donald Trump did to this country for years to come. The distrust that he sowed in our system and in our democracy and in our elections, it's going to take years and years to fix that. This isn't just about winning this election. It's about where we go forward. We say we're not going back, and we mean we're not going back. And to not go back, we have to continue to push forward, and we have to continue to undo the damage that Donald Trump has done. But once again, we see former Republicans, former independents like Jim McCain, who says, you know what, that's not the Republican Party of my dad, and that's an extreme version of it, and I want nothing to do with it, and switching over, registering as a Democrat in order to support Kamala Harris, because, again, I feel like she's the only choice for us moving forward.